Hello and welcome to Walker Tea Review. I'm Jason Walker, and it's been a while since I've talked about or shown you a white tea. We've been looking at a lot of black teas, oolongs, some greens lately, but those have been slowing down, even some pu'ers. But let's get into a white tea today. This one is a Yunnan white tea, and I'm going to be telling you a little bit more about it. But I've got out my regular equipment ready to go here. I want to just kind of shake in enough because this is kind of a bulky, big fluffy type of tea. I'm going to kind of just use my fingers here and pull out enough here to just kind of cover that bottom 1.5 inch diameter there. And I just want to be able to not see the bottom really. So that should be enough. I mean, you can still see through here and there. It's like I said, it takes up a lot of space, and you can kind of look down through the leaves there. But that should be a good enough indication right there. Let's go ahead and get this one started to steep. This is a white tea, and talking about white teas and fragrances and whatnot. One of the things that I've done is I've started to move away from even heavy fragrances that I use in my in shampoos, in laundry detergents. I just find that when I distance myself from very strong aromas, whether they be colognes or whatever, it just helps me to be able to appreciate natural smells that much more. You become much more aware. It's just like if someone were a smoker, had smoked for years, and then all of a sudden stopped smoking. It's almost like their nose wakes up from that, and they begin to, first off, they may be able to smell that other people around them are smokers, even when that person isn't smoking. You start to pick up, your nose just becomes more attuned, and starts picking up it starts picking up a broader range of smells. And so one of the things that you may want to consider if you really want to learn to appreciate teas is tone down or get away from strong aromas in your detergents, your soaps, your whatever you use for clean detergents. Being also talking about cleaning your vessels, your teaware, your dishes, all those aspects, and even so far as toothpaste, mouthwashes, things like that. So, having said that, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this tea. This is from a company that I have not introduced before. This is LifeinTeacup. This is their JingMaiMoonlightWhite tea. This is from, like I mentioned, this tea was sourced from Jingmai village in Yunnan province. It was harvested in autumn of 2010. You can find 1 ounce available on LifeinTeacup. And the cost would be $4.50, so that's $4.50. Let's talk about this tea now. This is from the kinds of, or the area, and I suspect the kinds of tea varietals. I would say there's a large portion of these that are used for black teas and or probably some pu'er types as well, because if you look at LifeinTeacup's selection, they offer quite a few pu'ers as well. So, smelling of this tea, aromas are pretty light, and that's generally true of a lot of white teas. This one's fairly subtle as well. It has a little bit of a fresh peanut type of smell, not something overly roasted, but just kind of a fresh. With the juices, with the moisture still in the seed, kind of nutty peanut type of smell. Looking at these leaves, being a white tea, you do see a lot of white fuzzy needles. You've got good size needles as well. Let me pull out a few that you've got here. And leaf sets. Here's a leaf and a needle. Needles say, probably close to 1 inch in length if you straightened it out. Others here as well, just individual needles. Long, silvery, fuzzy as well. And you got some leaves that are a little bit darker in color, more closer to an ochre type color, but they're still mostly intact, fully intact leaf. At least the majority of the leaf is there, and also some other full-size leaves that have been wrinkled and twisted along the middle leaf, of the middle vein of the leaf, I should say. So So far, lots of character in the and lots of needles in the dry leaf. You're also seeing that they are sets. They're not just needles that were harvested separately or just thrown in to improve the grade or qualification of this tea. They came together, so that's a good sign as well. So let's go ahead then and get ready to steep this tea, or should I say pour this tea. Should have had enough time now to steep, and I'm going to, what you noticed there was that I put enough water above the rim so that some actually flowed over the sides, and that's fine, but it also gave me a kind of a seal, water seal along the rim of the lid here. I'm going to push that over to the side. That water seal just kind of kept the air from getting in and changing the color of this liquor. But now I'm ready to pour. Just like so. Let it steep quite a... I can tell that I gave it plenty of time by looking at that color. That's a pretty rich color. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this wet leaf, though. Okay, there's a little bit of, first off, I got a very light hint of Chinese family. They had actually grown, they lived in an apartment area, and they actually went out into some of the yard area of the apartment complex, and they just plucked the heads of the yellow heads of the dandelion, the flower there, and steeped that. And they added just a little bit of honey or sugar to sweeten later, and there is some of that kind of sweet dandelion smell that's coming off of this. So it's, again, not a very intense sweetness, and it's not the strongest floral component, just like you don't pick up a dandelion and expect a lot of sweet flower smell, but there is some there. Now, looking at these wet leaves, you're starting to see some of that these sets have unfurled. Here's an example of a needle that I'm holding on to, or a tip, or bud, I should say, with 2 leaves here. So I'll put that on my lid there. What else have we got here? Here's some individual leaves that have unfurled, so that looks nice. These have become fairly consistent in color. They're now more towards a lightly rusty kind of auburn brownish type color. And again, I'm pulling out several actual leaf bud pairs or sets here. So I'll go ahead and set that one here as well. So that's a good sign. And you can see that these are fairly large. These are large type buds or tips that are known to come from a lot of, or I should say, Yunnan tips or Yunnan teas are known for having that daya, that big leaf type look to them. So that's the varietal that's common to that area. So moving on, though, let's talk a little bit about this liquor. A nice honey type of color, fairly golden. Actually, quite a bit of brown there. And another thing I guess I should note to talk about, stepping back for just a minute, looking at the wet leaf, there is a lot of that rust type of color there, which makes me wonder how did oxidation take place? Did some of that color come from an oxidizing process? Some of these leaves look fairly consistent in color. Well, I do see a little bit more of reddishness along the outer jagged edge of these leaves, but for the most part, the rest of the leaf looks fairly consistent in color. So my first guess would be that this is more a result of some of the heat that was put on these teas to dry them out, to fire them. Okay, let's go ahead and give this a taste though. First off, aromas or tastes fairly light. It's got a thin, kind of a light, watered down honey kind of sweetness to it. To me, it calls to mind some kind of some of your chrysanthemum teas have a similar note to them. Like again, some of that dandelion still coming out as well. Not a lot of strong astringency, although there is a little bit of a light astringency that's hitting more towards the back of my mouth right now. The body, very light, and well, you know, white teas. I find that white teas generally have a light body. This one could be. This one's medium to I would say medium heavy as far as bodies go for white teas. Aftertaste, I'm kind of picking up a little bit of that now. Again, still some of that kind of lingering chrysanthemum, watered down honey, dandelion type, very gently vegetal sweetness, floral sweetness coming out right now, and still continues to carry on just a little bit. So, looking at this tea as a whole, let me talk about that for just a moment. I often find stronger, I should say, stronger competitors, stronger options of white teas coming from, say, Fujian province. I've tasted a couple of decent ones from Taiwan. But then when you get over to a lot of your Yunnan white teas, they can have a bit more of there's a peppery note there to them that you either like or you don't like, or it doesn't, or you say that it doesn't really fall into the category of what a white tea should have. This one, on the other hand, does not have a lot of that kind of black peppery type component to it. There's that spicy element that's not present here. Which for me is a positive, because this one gets over towards the more traditional, the more classic type of white tea components to it. And what I find with those white teas that have the peppery, something about them just to me says you should. I want to look at that tea and say you should have become a black tea. You did not, or a pu'er. You didn't realize your destiny. This tea did, I think, come much closer to achieving its destiny. So when I look at this tea as a whole, I would give this tea a 90. It's got some nice components to it. It doesn't stray into weird. It doesn't have an identity crisis, and it carries some positive notes of what people generally look to white teas to do and to taste like. So come back to Walker Tea Review, where we're looking at exploring white teas and their destiny and ours as well.